Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Zaincast. Today we're going to be doing my ENG4U FSE project. So the task we were given was to link one world that we know from English class to another one that we're very familiar with. So for me that would be Pokemon. So I'm going to start off with some terms that most people wouldn't understand off the bat so that I can explain things more easily on in the next parts. So first I have the Pokédex. So for those of you who don't understand, the Pokédex is basically the encyclopedia filled with Pokemon knowledge. It differs between game to TV show, but I'm going to be covering the ones in different games. The next one will be generation games. So when I refer to something as a Generation 1 game, for example, I mean the games that were released first. So Pokemon generally releases games as sets, so Pokemon Red and Blue would be Generation 1. So for my first actual connection, I'll be making the connection between the character Hamlet from Hamlet and Cubone from Pokemon. So some background information on Cubone is he's a Generation 1 Pokemon, which means he was part of the original 151 Pokemon to be released. So Cubone's Pokemon Yellow Pokedex entry, it states it wears the skull of its deceased mother. It cries echo inside the skull and come out as a sad melody. In Pokemon Ultra Sun, the Pokedex entry reads, "At night it weeps out loudly for its dead mother, but those cries only attract its natural enemy, Mandibuzz." I'm going to put some stress here on its natural enemy being Mandibuzz. This will come to light a little bit later in this talk here. So, in relation to Hamlet, Cubone is mourning his parent. Obviously, it's not the same because Cubone is mourning his dead mother, whereas Hamlet would be mourning his dead father. But the connections don't end there. In Act 1, Scene 2, Hamlet is also known to be wearing black, notably because his father had passed away a month or two ago, and he's still mourning whilst everyone else has moved on to the marriage of the next king of Denmark, which would be his uncle Claudius. We can also link the fact that Cubone wears the skull of its dead mother to mourn it, and Hamlet here is wearing black to remember his father, which gets pointed out later by Claudius when he says, "How is it that the clouds still hang on you?" when he's referring to Hamlet. Okay, so for my second connection here, I'll be connecting the character Horatio from Hamlet to the Pokemon Braviary. Some background on Braviary. Braviary is a flying Pokemon introduced in Generation 5. Its Pokemon X version and Omega Ruby version Pokedex entry reads that for the sake of its friends, this brave warrior of the sky will not stop battling, even if injured. Its Pokemon Ultra Moon Pokedex entry reads, known as, quote, the hero of the skies. This Pokemon is so proud and so brave that it will never retreat, even when it's injured. So the connection here between Horatio and Braviary here will be that Horatio is completely loyal to Hamlet. This is a character trait that he's given off 3 times during the play, at least. One is when he originally spots the ghost of King Hamlet. He instead of trying to warn the king or anyone else, he goes directly to his friend Hamlet. Another occasion is when Hamlet tells Horatio about his plan to kill King Claudius. Horatio says absolutely nothing and goes along with Hamlet's plan. And the third and final moment when Horatio is undyingly loyal to Hamlet is when Hamlet is dying at the end of the play, and he asks Horatio to spread the word or spread the story of Hamlet. In this case here, you can contrast Horatio's relationship with Hamlet to Rosencrantz and Guildenstern's relationship with Hamlet, because they were both parties were friends at childhood, but in the end it's Horatio that's loyal to Hamlet, and coincidentally he's the party that's alive at the end of the play. So obviously Horatio has made the right choice here. Horatio also had incentive many times during Hamlet to either foil his plans or just not go along with what Hamlet's saying. Such as when he makes the promise to Hamlet in Act 1 to keep the ghost sighting quiet, and when Hamlet proposes his antic disposition, Horatio goes along completely with Hamlet's idea, not once even thinking to be disloyal to Hamlet. In the end, both Breviary and Horatio are brave fighters who will never betray their friends. Okay, so for my third connection here, I'll be connecting King Claudius from Hamlet to two Pokemon this time. Number one being the Pokemon known as Mandibuzz. Now, if you recall, I referred to Mandibuzz earlier when I was connecting Hamlet to Cubone. I stated that Cubone and Mandibuzz are natural enemies. And the second Pokemon here is the ghost Pokemon Gengar. Gengar is a Generation 1 Pokemon. So the Pokemon Moon version Pokédex entry of Mandibuzz states, it circles in the sky, keeping a keen eye out for Pokemon in a weakened state. Its choicest food is Cubone. Okay, so for Gengar, the Pokemon Soul Silver Pokédex entry states, to steal the life of its target, it slips into the prey's shadow and silently waits for an opportunity. So, in addition, the Pokemon Ultra Moon Pokédex entry states for Gengar, even your home isn't safe. Gengar will lurk in whatever dark corner of a room it can find and wait for its chance to catch its prey. Okay, so now I'm going to connect King Claudius to Mandibuzz. So earlier I stated that Mandibuzz is looking for a Pokemon in a weakened state, its choicest food being Cubone. Now earlier I connected Cubone to Hamlet, so the connection here to Mandibuzz would be King Claudius is always looking for a way to kill Hamlet, especially towards the end of the play. And as for Gengar, I earlier stated that it's always looking for its prey's shadow and silently waits for an opportunity. So what I'm referring to here is when Claudius was waiting to kill his brother, King Hamlet, before the events of the play. So to steal the life of its target, Claudius did exactly what Gengar would and waited for an opportunity. Now, the second connection to Gengar I think is especially creepy because it explicitly says here, even your home isn't safe. Gengar will lurk in whatever dark corner of a room it can find. So the connection here is that Hamlet's home was never safe from Claudius because he was just going to wait for his time to spring, and he completely kills Hamlet's father, King Hamlet, and then takes King Hamlet's wife. So that's a connection for Claudius to Mandibuzz and Gengar. Okay, so for the fourth connection here I'm going to be making is King Hamlet or Hamlet Sr. to the Pokemon Marowak. Marowak is a Generation 1 Pokemon, meaning that it's in the original 151 Pokemon. Similar to his son being Cubone, it's more fitting that King Hamlet is the mother figure for the Cubone-Marowak relationship. It goes past that as well in the first generation games, Pokemon Red and Blue version. There's a plot where the angry spirit of Marowak is restless because of it being killed unfairly by the forces of the evil organization known as Team Rocket. This can be seen in other forms of Pokemon media as well. Different depictions have different alterations, but in the end it's relatively the same. The plot goes like this: Marowak is killed by Team Rocket, and Cubone is left alone to fend for itself. But Marowak's spirit here is very upset and haunts the Lavender Tower in the Pokemon games. And it's only soothed when the player gets there, or your character as a main protagonist. The connection here is obvious to me, at least, that Claudius is an angry spirit after being killed unfairly. Exactly the same plot as what happens to Marowak. Okay, so for my fifth and final connection between Hamlet and Pokemon is going to be the character Gertrude and the Pokemon Love Disc. So, Love Disc's Pokemon Fire Red and Leaf Green Pokedex entry reads, during the spawning season, countless Love Discs congregate at coral reefs, turning the waters pink. Also, in its Pokemon Sun Pokedex entry, it reads, if a love disc is left on its own, it becomes despondent, leaving itself open to attack. So, Love Disc here I'm observing is what I'd call a lust Pokemon. Now, Pokemon itself, or the Pokemon Company, would never outright say that a Pokemon is a lust Pokemon, because it is a family-friendly entity. So, the observation here I'm making is that Gertrude, much like Love Disc, it is innocent by itself, but its lust just takes over it. Hamlet states this later on in the play when he's talking to Gertrude alone. You cannot call it love, for at your age the heyday in the blood is tame. It's humble and waits upon the judgment, and what judgment would step from this to this, referring to Claudius and King Hamlet. Also, Gertrude is what I assume to be completely useless alone, because she does remarry in like 2 months to not only her dead husband's family member, his own brother. So Gertrude really doesn't have a high standard when it comes to men, especially when Hamlet states what kind of man Claudius is. When he states, here's your husband, like a mildewed ear, blasting his wholesome brother. Have you eyes? Could you on this fair mountain leave to feed and batten on this moor? Ha! Have you eyes? And that's a connection between Love Disc and Gertrude. Okay, so that concludes this episode of the Zaincast. Hopefully you enjoyed these connections. I really liked making them myself. Hope to see you next episode.